Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the CreativeXR Epic Games and StoryFutures Academy webinar, where you will learn more from our partners on how they can support you in making application to our program. Please do make sure to use the hashtag CreativeXR on social media to get talking. And just to let you all know that your cameras and audio is turned off intentionally to avoid any feedback coming through on the webinar. So welcome, everyone. My name is Evelyn Ofori-Karagu. I am the Innovation Delivery Manager at Digital Catapult, and I will be your MC for today. Now, in light of COVID-19, we appreciate that it has had a massive impact on the arts and culture sector. And we at Digital Catapult and Arts England want to make sure that creators have the resources and insight necessary to navigate this time. And that's why we have created a series of webinars to give you the opportunity to speak to our partners and friends and understand more about the industry so that you can continue pushing the boundaries in the industry. So in light of that, you'll be hearing from Epic Games and StoryFutures Academy, and there'll be opportunity for questions later on. So the agenda for today, I'll quickly talk through housekeeping. Then you'll hear from my colleagues from Digital Catapult and Arts Council England about what the CreativeXR program is all about and how you can apply. Then you'll be hearing from Miko and Ben from Epic Games, who will be giving you more insight into how the Unreal Engine can support you in making your content. And then you'll also hear from James and Adam from StoryFutures Academy to give you an overview of how they can help you in writing a narrative for your content pieces. Then you'll also have a chance to ask them questions. So while those presentations are going on, you can send through your questions to us, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of everything. And once all that is done, it'll be thank you and next steps. So please do remember that this webinar is being recorded, and we will share the presentations with everyone after the webinar. So if for any reason you have to leave before the webinar is done, we will send it through to you via a link in our post-event email. There is also a Zoom chat facility. So this is available for everyone to get talking, connecting, and hopefully collaborating. So at the bottom of your screen, in your menu, you will see a chat box. If you just click that, a box will appear, and we encourage you to talk with one another while the presentations are going on to connect. And in order to aid and facilitate that connection, we have also created a Typeform collaboration survey where we encourage attendees to fill this in if they want to work on projects together, and perhaps they're missing skills or capabilities in their team that they need to add. So for example, if you're a script writer and you're looking for a producer, or you are a director looking for a 3D game designer, make sure you fill out this survey in case you miss one another in the chat, and we will facilitate that connection between you all. So that Typeform survey link will be shared in the chat. But again, if you miss it with the busy conversation going on, we will share it again in the post-event email. So as I mentioned before, there will be an audience Q&A. So you can ask questions to our speakers while their presentations are going on. We ask you to direct them to the Q&A form. So not the chat form, but the Q&A form. We won't answer questions in the Zoom chat. So make sure they are put in the correct place to make sure that I get the questions and can direct them to the relevant person. And when you are asking your questions, please make sure to direct it to the relevant presenter. And again, if you have seen a question that you really want to be answered, make sure to upvote it with a thumbs up, and that will just highlight it to us to get that asked. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to my colleagues, Madalena Crosti and Tonya Nelson from Digital Catapult and Arts Council England. So Maddie, are you ready?
Hello, good morning. I'm ready.
Great.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this morning. My name is Maddalena Crosti, and I'm the program lead for the immersive programs at Digital Catapult. And I'm just going to give you a quick overview of Digital Catapult, which is one of the organizations behind CreativeXR. So at Digital Catapult, our key goal is to accelerate the early adoption of advanced digital technologies in the UK. And we work across 4 different technology verticals, which are future networks, which include 5G and IoT, immersive technologies, artificial intelligence, and distributed systems. And we run various projects and programs across these technologies and across 2 main industries, which are the creative industries and the manufacturing industries. So CreativeXR is our flagship immersive accelerator program, and it sits obviously within the creative space, and it's been designed for creators to produce a prototype of an immersive experience. So this is the 3rd cohort that we will be running. And so far we have supported 40 companies to develop 40 prototypes. And 9 of those prototypes have also received further production funding through the program as well. This program was developed in partnership with Arts Council England, and you'll be hearing a bit more about Arts Council England from Tonya. But this year I also wanted to highlight that we're really excited to have 2 new partners on board, which are Epic Games and StoryFutures Academy. And they really bring their own specialized experience to the program that we expect will really help push the boundaries of the types of projects that we can help develop through this program. So as a participant of CreativeXR, what would you receive? You would receive £20,000 in prototype funding, free use of the immersive labs, which are all over the UK and which many teams in the past have used for things like user testing and for team workshops. Throughout this 3-month development period of the prototype, you would also receive bespoke mentorship. And this could range from narrative support to business plan development support to technical support, depending on what your needs are and where you sit within the program. And of course, StoryFutures Academy and Epic Games come into this part of the program, and they'll be telling you a bit more about it later. And finally, you will pitch at the Commissioner Showcase, which last year we held in October. And we had a lot of attendees from all over the world, financiers and commissioners, and a lot of teams were able to raise distribution opportunities, exhibition opportunities, and financing as well. So it was a really successful event. This year we will be hosting it in November, and we are prepared to either host it in person or remotely, depending on how the COVID situation develops, but we do still very much plan for that to be part of the program. Finally, I have a new benefit that I'd like to announce, which is the AWS vouchers. So every company on the program will be eligible to receive £10,000 worth of cloud credit to be used over 2 years. And we really hope this will especially help develop more exciting and innovative prototypes. So, and finally, another really big benefit of the program is the fact that you would be part of a cohort of 20 extremely talented teams. And many of the teams ended up collaborating with each other on either CreativeXR projects or projects beyond CreativeXR after the program. And the past cohorts have really highlighted how important this aspect is in the program, and they actually wanted to see more and do more with the other teams. So this year we're building in more opportunities for peer-to-peer learning, which is really important. So what do we mean by immersive experience in the context of CreativeXR? Because of course it's a very broad term. So firstly, the experience is definitely an audience-facing one, so meant for a consumer. It can be delivered through virtual, augmented, or mixed reality. And when it's not on a head-mounted display, it can still use an element of real-time technologies, such as Unreal. It could have an element of interactivity in it. And finally, it could definitely be a spatial audio experience. So in other words, the experience uses these technologies to somehow create a sense of space that the audience member feels around them. And do remember that CreativeXR is a content accelerator. So we definitely look at the creative concept of the immersive experience and how developed that concept is and how ready it is to be made into a prototype. So the strands. This year, the CreativeXR teams, other than applying to the more general CreativeXR brief, also presents different strands within the brief. So they're basically themes that within the overall brief that teams can apply for to receive additional benefits. So the first two are strands that are focused on the technology expertise within Digital Catapult. So the first one is a 5G strand. So 5G ready projects or projects that can somehow showcase the capability of 5G. And the second one is the AI strand, so a strand that projects that can showcase or that utilize an element of artificial intelligence. And there are different benefits that projects would receive as being part of this strand, but I think the biggest one is really to have bespoke support, one-to-one support from Digital Catapult technologists who are very highly experienced and trained in their field. So one of them, we'd have 5G technologists and AI technologists helping you develop your that part of your prototype. And if you'd like to hear more about these, we did have a webinar last week, and the link is available to be shared because we recorded it. So do get in touch if you'd like to hear more about that. And the other two strands are, of course, our partner strands. So the StoryFutures Academy strand, which is focused on narrative and repeatable experiences, and you'll be hearing more about that later. And the Unreal Engine strand by Epic Games. So projects that are built on Unreal Engine. So just as a reminder, the open call closes on May 17th. And then we have a 3-month prototyping period between July and September. And then the showcase will be held in November, either in person or remotely, depending on how the situation evolves with COVID-19. Next slide, please. And finally, just a few words about CreativeXR and its role in the post-pandemic recovery. So we do understand that the pandemic and this situation has really caused challenges for you to overcome. And we encourage you to think creatively around these challenges. So in terms of production methodologies, what type of piece will you be able to produce between July and September? And also we encourage you to really think creatively around the distribution formats. So in a post-pandemic world, what will your audience be comfortable with seeing? Where will they be seeing it? How will they be accessing your piece once the prototype is finished into a final experience? So we understand these are challenges, but we also really believe in the ability of this sector to be able to innovate and think creatively around these challenges. So we do encourage you to really use all your creativity as you're writing your CreativeXR application, and also to collaborate with each other. And this is why we're really trying to create opportunities for you to meet each other and use each other's skills, to write a CreativeXR application, or to even work on some other project. So do take advantage of the chat box, of the type form, to connect with each other. So that's it from me. Thank you very much. And I'm going to hand over to Tanya now, from Arts Council England, and I'll see you later at the Q&A.
Hi, everybody. Let's see, am I being seen and heard? I hope so. Yes. Okay. I just wanted to say a couple of words about how CreativeXR fits within Arts Council's strategy. So just to give you a context in terms of what we're looking for and the applications that you might put in. So Let's Create is our new 10-year strategy that was launched in February before COVID-19 hit. But the big premise behind Let's Create is that we want people from at all levels to not only have the ability to engage with arts, but also to create new types of art. So at an individual level, at a community level, and at a national level. So can I have the next slide, please? So one of our outcomes that we're looking for from our new strategy is to have a creative and cultural country. And that is a country that fosters innovation, that innovation not only within the arts and culture, but innovation across all industries. And we think kind of in being able to engage with creative industries and arts is a way to kind of produce that innovation. And we'll be supporting organizations and individuals and groups that are really interested in using new technologies for developing new types of work, but also for connecting with audiences in different ways and being quite experimental. So we're really looking to support people who have new ideas and who want to experiment in what they're doing with new technology. And we really feel CreativeXR is something we've invested in for several years before this new strategy, but we feel it's a flagship program that really helps to foster that kind of innovation in the immersive realm. Can I have the next slide? What we'll also be supporting within our new strategy is this idea of dynamism. So that whole idea of that, we need organizations to be rapidly responding to the changing environment. And obviously COVID-19 is making us all be very dynamic in what we're doing and responding to changes. I think this is a really great time to be thinking about immersive and new technologies in the context of the fact that people are kind of starting to consume more and more of their culture via online methods and through new technologies. And we want to encourage you to be thinking about what the current context means in terms of the projects you might shape. Certainly, I think before COVID-19, we were seeing an upward trend of people wanting to experience immersive experiences in locations, in location-based experiences. So at festivals or in museums or places where where they might be able to go outside of their home. It might be that COVID-19 gets people thinking about more home-based experiences around immersive. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of new business models and what kind of new projects come out of that kind of potential change and trend. Can I have the next slide? And I just put in this last slide just to say, many of you probably are aware that Arts Council has been directing a lot of its funding towards emergency response for our portfolio organizations, which we core fund, and even our organizations that we don't core fund, but we give project funding to. But what we are aware of is in this particular environment and going forward is we have to support people in being able to change their business models, to create public-facing projects that are digital and online, and that we're willing to support people with their digital costs of transferring their businesses online. And I think it's just a really great time for you people who are very interested in applying to CreativeXR to be to be working, because there are lots of organizations who will want to partner with you and want to collaborate with you on your projects. So all I can say is this is a really, really great time for you to be thinking about CreativeXR, a really great time for you to be applying. And I really just encourage you all to put forward your great ideas and projects. That's it.
Hi guys, this is Ben here. I'm just going to jump in ahead of Miko for a second, if that's okay, Evelyn.
Sure.
So we're absolutely thrilled to be part of this this year. We're really thrilled to be a part of this this presentation, and I just want to give a few high-level aspects about us as a company. We've been going for 30 years, and we've been making video games for 30 years. Some of you will be aware of some of these titles, such as Infinity Blade and Gears of War series, and then most recently Fortnite. And we've had some considerable success with all of those, but the technology strand that that Miko and I represent is Unreal Engine as a business. And we've been making Unreal Engine for 22 years. And that started off as a game level editing tool. Tim Sweeney, who's our founder and CEO, created the first version of Unreal Engine as a level editing tool. And a lot of the technology still exists to this day, and a lot of similarities exist within the software as a platform. But I just wanted to give a sort of an overview of where we see the future of entertainment going here, and why we're a part of this process this year. You may have seen some of the crossovers that we've been doing in Fortnite. So we see a real convergence between the worlds of film and TV and video games and entertainment as a whole. And in fact, we see a whole new era of spatialized computing, whereby there's going to be a new industrial revolution, if you like, whereby we have the next version of the internet. And if you think of what the internet felt like in 1995 and the late 90s going into the early 2000s, you weren't really quite sure where it was going, and no one could predict what the internet was going to do. And we feel as though there's a whole new era, an industrial revolution upon us at the moment. We've been doing some crossovers within Fortnite, which started with a show that we did with Marshmallow, the radio producer, in February of last year, where we had 11 million people all live and in game enjoying a show. And over the course of the year, we've also done crossovers with the NFL, with the Avengers franchise, with John Wick, Stranger Things, and the game Borderlands 3. The Nike as a brand, Batman, and last week we had a concert with Travis Scott, where we had 27 million people who individually tuned in to watch a concert. And this, what I suppose the main message that I'd like to get across to any creators out there is that our technology is free to use, and we'd love to see what you guys can do with it over the course of this cohort. For the filmmakers out there like Jon Favreau, who started using this technology on The Mandalorian, and Alejandro Inarritu, who started to use the technology for his virtual reality experience, Carney Arena. It represents a bit of a sea change with where we believe content creation is going, and we want to be right at the center of that. I'd encourage anyone who has an interest in that aspect of it, the filmmaking aspect, to check out our website. We've got a whole section on virtual production. It's uevirtualproduction.com, but you can find it linked on the media and entertainment section of our website. But there's a huge amount of activity there, and a hive of up and coming independent filmmakers. But we're absolutely thrilled to see what you guys do, and I'm gonna hand over to Miko.
Great, thanks for that, Ben. Can everybody hear me okay? Cool.
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Yes, so yes, hi, I'm Miko. I lead a technical artist team on the developer relations kind of team within Unreal Engine, based in the London office. Well, home now, but usually in the London office. And I'm going to give you a quick kind of whirlwind tour of what's available in Unreal Engine for creators when creating, well, immersive experiences, but kind of anything, games from films and things like that. If you go to next slide, please, as well, even the next one. So the engine, as Ben mentioned, is kind of a result of over 30 years of work and technology, and the kind of historical focus always has been on kind of AAA games, so the kind of games with big budgets and kind of high visual content and state-of-the-art graphics. And that's why I think Unreal Engine has been kind of mainly known and is known for being kind of the king of kind of good-looking visuals, and that's why it's being kind of now adopted by feature films and animated content and all kinds of other experiences. But I mean, the basis of that now in the current version is physically based rendering. So it's a very kind of industry standard way of doing content that looks realistic. And then I think the kind of highlight now in the past year, 2 years is the real-time ray tracing, which has been a real kind of game changer for kind of providing kind of intuitive tools for creating very, very realistic and high level visuals. And also, we have a advanced cinematic post-processing tools for doing very traditional kind of tool set based grading, depth of field, all these kind of high-end effects. And all this is, from comes out of the box. And the kind of cool thing about this is that all these tools, they scale from simple to extremely detailed scenes, environment, and characters. So you don't have to kind of, like, once you kind of do your project properly, you can then deploy it in, high-end desktops to mobile VR-based devices without doing huge changes. Next slide, please. And then another kind of big benefit for content creators compared to maybe some of the other engines out there is our Blueprint visual scripting tool, which is basically a way for you to just create code without having to write any C++. So it's a very easy way to get started for doing fairly complex interactions, and also it's a good way to prototype. But it's not just for prototyping. It's like Fortnite, for example, uses Blueprints for a lot of its interactivity content, and it's being kind of used all over in games and other experiences to do production-ready interactions. So it's a very just like a nice way of getting your feet wet and then actually kind of diving deep into interactive content and interactive functionality. Next slide, please. And another kind of nice intuitive and familiar way for if you're coming from traditional digital content creation software is our node-based material editor. So again, there's no need to, like when creating looks and kind of materials and effects and things like that, there's no need to write any code. Unreal Engine comes with a kind of the material editor where it just kind of wire together functions and texture reads and things like that to kind of come up with a material that you can then apply to your objects. So it's very similar to any other, like Maya, 3ds Max and things, way of working. So very powerful tools there as well. Next slides, please. And then for animation, also, I think, I mean, that we could spend, hours and hours talking about the animation system and the various editors that come with it. But again, here, kind of key takeaway is that it's very powerful. It provides, your kind of regular keyframed animation support, but then we have a very robust physics-based or kind of physics system as well that you can then use to interact with your characters and animation as well. And we're actually in the process of rewriting and providing a full-blown kind of very modern physics system called Chaos. You might have seen a little demo based on the Robo Recall characters for that. And then also just kind of the kind of animation workflow of kind of animation state machine, kind of working out what animations to trigger is based on the Blueprint kind of paradigm. So again, very visual, very intuitive way of working with your animations. Next slide, please. The audio system. So again, like it's based on the notes, very intuitive. But then, especially I think for immersive experiences, the latest version, version 4.25, that actually comes out next week, already available as previews. But it has a few really kind of key kind of out-of-the-box features for immersive experiences. One is what we call convolution reverb. So basically a way to simulate kind of reverbs based on real-world samples for physical spaces. So you have like occlusion, kind of audio bouncing from surfaces, and just kind of provides a realistic sound environment that way. And then also we have a support for now native sound field ambisonics. So kind of like full ambisonic native support. So you can actually do a very, very immersive soundscapes right out of the box. Next slide, please. And another kind of cool feature is Niagara, which is our next generation visual effects and particle effects system. And if you're familiar with Unreal Engine and the kind of previous particle system, which was called Cascade, the kind of big benefits of Niagara is that it's a completely open and adaptable system. So it interfaces really well with external data sources such as audio. It could be, it could read, I don't know, the current weather and kind of react to that. And it just provides you a very, very flexible way of extending the base functionality, again, without any programming needed. So you can actually go in and, again, with a very blueprint oriented system to kind of come up with completely unique effects based on your needs and your projects. Next slide, please. And then again, kind of moving on to kind of UI and motion graphic, or kind of, well, basically UI. So it's Unreal Motion Graphics. Is the name of the feature. Might be a bit misleading, but it's basically kind of our UI editor, and then ways to create user interfaces and the interactivity for those. And it's again, like if you've done programming or kind of used any kind of IDEs to do, iPhone apps or things like that, it's very, very familiar. So we provide you with a base set of widgets, such as, buttons and text boxes and input fields and things like that. And it's completely drag and drop. You just create your layouts visually. And then when you do want to wire the UI functionality to your kind of experience mechanics or gameplay mechanics, it again works with the blueprint system. So very, very intuitive and easy to get going. And I think the kind of overall theme here, if you can kind of already kind of hear that, it's that everything is very unified in terms of kind of how these different features work together via the blueprint system. Next slide, please. And then kind of moving on, kind of more on the kind of content creation side. One kind of big, obviously you can create your 3D models and animations and bring them in and kind of do that. But then the big kind of for large scale worlds and massive open world type maps, we have the landscape and foliage system, which gives you kind of really powerful tools to either do kind of hand painted kind of worlds and maps, but also to kind of procedurally generate and populate your kind of world with grass and trees and things like that. And it's also very, very heavily optimized, and it will work on each platform that Unreal Engine supports. So again, you can go from very high-end desktop machines to kind of mobile-based VR or AR experiences. Next slide, please. And then kind of from kind of more of a kind of linear content perspective, we have the sequencer, which is our multi-track editor, kind of used for creating and previewing cinematic content, cinematic sequences, but in real time. So if you've used, Final Cut Pro or After Effects, it's the UI and the kind of workflow is very, very similar. But the only kind of main difference is that you're actually working in your real-time 3D content. So it's really kind of powerful tool to kind of bring your kind of shots together have kind of iterate on content, iterate on lighting, kind of move your cameras and tweak like that, and then it's all non-destructive, so you can always go back and forth and you're gonna see how it works. So very, very powerful feature there. Next slide, please. And then kind of take, like, you know, kind of after having this kind of quick tour of the kind of overall features, then kind of actually kind of specifically for kind of XR type of stuff, we have a unified augmented reality framework, which is it's a rich kind of way of building augmented reality apps for multiple platforms again. So it's all unified. So, you know, you kind of have a single path of development for iOS, Android, and even for kind of your AR headsets, kind of using a single kind of code path or blueprint path, and however you want to do. And we also provide with the engine a kind of blueprint template that kind of provides you a complete example project that then demonstrates all the different functionalities you get with the engine. Next slide, please. And then on VR, obviously, you know, we've been kind of at the forefront of creating VR games from the very beginning, from the kind of original Rift with Robo Recall and Bullet Train and all these kind of things. So the engine has been kind of heavily optimized to give you a kind of rendering pipeline that gets you the high frame rates you need at high resolutions without any code changes needed. So kind of that again kind of speaks to the scalability of the engine, that you can kind of go from simple to extreme to detailed scenes, environment, characters, and then the engine kind of, once you build your project correctly, kind of handles the kind of differences between your deployment platforms. And it's a pretty kind of low friction start to get going, and a very rapid iteration for this as well. It's just kind of plug in your kit and start experimenting on your headset. And also we support, I mean, we have the latest kind of frequent updates and latest hardware support for Magic Leap, Rift, Steam VR, OpenXR, PlayStation VR. Well, pretty much any kind of major platform out there. And one thing actually I don't have a slide for, but kind of just I just want to touch on based on some of the earlier comments, that given the current situation with COVID-19, like we have a pretty kind of good, a little bit work in progress still, but it's still kind of very powerful tool set for kind of remote collaboration within the editor, kind of called the multi-user editor. And it was kind of originally developed for kind of film, kind of on-set film workflows where you have, you know, a bunch of Unreal artists working maybe on the Mandalorian content that's on the LED screens. But it basically allows multiple people to kind of connect to the same session of the editor. So it's not like a multi-user game, but it's actually kind of from a creator side, a multi-user creator kind of environment. And that works across the internet. So, you know, if your team is distributed across, well, just even kind of home offices, you are able to actually connect to the same editor session and work together collaboratively in the editor, which is a really kind of nice way of you know, collaborating in these times. Next slide, please. And then just kind of give you a little bit of a kind of tour of the learning resources we have online. And the first one, if you go to the next slide, please, is the Epic Games Launcher. So this is where you actually install kind of the latest versions of the engine and launch them from. But it also has a bunch more content on it. And I think the kind of big one to update is the Learning tab, where you have access to all kinds of sample projects, demo kind of content that you can kind of dig deep and kind of break and learn that way. And also we have the Marketplace, which provides access to a lot of very high quality content at very kind of competitive prices, but also a monthly drop of free content, and also kind of epic kind of released free content. So it's a really kind of powerful resource for getting going. And all that content, all content that Epic provides is royalty free, so you can actually kind of go and get a lot of you know, content from our games that have been discontinued and use those freely in your projects. Next slide, please. And then we have our online learning resources, and we have a pretty, you know, large collection now of manual tutorials, and we also give you kind of guided learning paths. So if you want to get started or become a ArcViz guy or blueprints, we give you kind of like a tour or a guide or a path of tutorials to take. We also have a lot of kind of industry experts, both internal and external, giving these presentations and talks. We have little tests and quizzes, and also we kind of gamify it so you can actually earn achievements and get badges to kind of build your learner profile and share that in social media to kind of showcase your skills to the wider world. Next slide, please. And then we have the documentation, which is where you kind of, when you want to dig deeper into specific features. So we have getting started guides, how-to guides, quick start guides, but also then just kind of deeper, kind of more resource-based or kind of descriptive of properties and things like that. So you can actually kind of really dig deep and kind of get under the hood of the engine to learn it that way. Next slide, please. And then we have live streams. I think we have weekly. These kind of are on every Thursday. Broadcast from our headquarters in Cary, North Carolina. And these kind of vary from training sessions to kind of showcases of new features and kind of things like that. And they're just really nice kind of way of keeping in touch with the kind of wider community and what's happening within the engine. We're also going to talk about new hardware and things like that. So it's a nice little distraction to kind of look at some cool content. Next slide, please. Then we have the community-driven forums and answer hub, where we have a very active kind of community answering questions, posting content people have done, getting feedback, kind of both creative and technical, and just kind of stay in touch with the wider kind of users and community. And then finally, if you go to next slide, please, we have the Unreal Developer Network, which is our private kind of ticketed support forum. And if you actually get accepted to the program, you get access to this. So this is where you then can get expert help from if needed from the developer of the feature in the engine kind of directly. Get everything is triage and you guaranteed an answer within a certain time. So this is a very kind of powerful and useful access to get to. Next slide, please. Well, actually, yeah, that kind of concludes my part of it. So thanks very much for listening, and hopefully you good luck for applications, and hopefully you'll pick up Unreal Engine for creating it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikko. So next, Ben, I know that you had spoken just before Mikko had started his presentation. Was there anything else that you wanted to add at this point?
No, I think that's good for the moment. I see there are some questions coming in, but I'll look to do those in the Q&A.
Great. So yes, just like Ben has mentioned, please make sure that you send your questions to the Q&A box. Anything that you've just heard that you're curious to know more about, direct them there, and they'll be answered in the Q&A session. So up next, we have James and Adam from StoryFutures Academy. So James and Adam, are you ready?
I think so.
Yeah. Yes, we are.
Wonderful. So yes, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for having us, Evelyn, and it's really exciting to be partnering with CreativeXR again this year. We've worked now with a couple of years with this, and this is the opportunity we've had this year to get more involved at this stage in helping shape some of the projects through this development cycle. StoryFutures Academy is the National Centre for Immersive Storytelling, funded by the industrial strategy back when there was an industrial strategy that wasn't just aimed at sorting out the current mess. And the aim really being of our program to help make the UK a world leader in immersive storytelling. In particular, kind of like our remit is to ensure that the investment that's been made in technologies in immersive are met with great storytellers and great storytelling opportunities. If I could have the next slide. It's a collaboration. Thanks. It's a collaboration between the National Film and Television School and Royal Holloway University of London that is based around connecting kind of two key areas: the world's #1 film school and trainer of professionals for screen industries in the National Film and Television School, and Royal Holloway's R&D base and its expertise, particularly in media arts, in computer science, in engineering, business and psychology, and linking those two aspects of research and training together to help understand what the possibilities for immersive storytelling are. Next slide, please. Our remit is to create cutting-edge creative training programs that draw on that collaboration. We have a particular focus on taking the brilliance of UK screen industries, film, television, games, theatre, who aren't already working in immersive, and helping them make that journey into immersive. And looking at some of the chat today, I can see there's quite a lot of filmmakers, theatre makers, games makers who are reaching out and trying to find other collaborators. And that's something we're really keen to support and see happen in this, because the UK has got a kind of heritage of being one of the best storytellers and exploiting IP in the world. And that's really where our focus is how do we create IP that is returnable, that is sequential or series orientated, to draw on that heritage and make the UK a leader. So moving on to the next slide. We kind of see ourselves as a bridge to help those people from screen industries make a journey across into the immersive landscape by either facilitating collaborations or running training courses, which for 4 projects selected as part of the strand, the StoryFutures Academy strand, would be supported in that training during the CreativeXR process. I'll take a quick break from talking, and we've got a very short video that shows a little bit about what we do. If we could move to the next slide, and hopefully the video will play.
And it's been quite mind-blowing, actually, just seeing all the possibilities.
And I feel really privileged to be part of a small group that might be there ahead of the curve.
It was a huge moment for the human race.
Being on this experience has been very life-changing.
If you want to understand immersive technology and you work in the creative sector, StoryFutures Academy is clearly the place that you should be going to.
For me, that's where I want to be, right at the cutting edge.
Thanks very much. We'd have the next slide, perfect. So our kind of like success is measured by things like the number of people that we've trained, the number of investments that we've helped create, and the number of jobs that we help create. So we're there to support you working in immersive and trying to build your business in this space. I could see kind of like a question is a good question, is StoryFutures Strand purely for people who work in screen industries? No, it is to support people working across the immersive landscape, but we do want to both, you know, try and particularly link those people who've worked in screen industries with the kind of established talent in the immersive landscape. And those 300 plus professionals we've trained are now effectively alumni and graduates of our courses who we can help put you in touch with, which is an exciting thing of new talent into the landscape that we want to facilitate access to. So I'm just moving on to the next slide to talk a bit about the partnership with CreativeXR, and what we wanted to achieve is there's already great stories being told in the immersive landscape, and you know, on that level, our aim is to help amplify and support that by saying we're here to help fund and run a program that helps develop those narrative ideas. But in particular, we're interested in ideas that have a returning format or a continuing series idea. So that we're interested in things that think about a scalable model into how storytelling can be more than just one experience, but loops people back into future experiences. So the projects that we're looking to support are those projects that can best think through how we create the kinds of equivalent formats that exist in television, in games, in theatre, into the immersive landscape. I'm going to hand over to Adam Gantz, who's the head of our writers room now, who's going to say a bit about how our program will support that. Adam?
Hi. Next slide, please. I'm head of the writers room, and we've already run a number of successful writers rooms, some in partnership with particular projects, working with Punch Drunk, who are a theatre company, but with a kind of real expertise in kind of site-specific or location drama. And what we are offering for this project is a 2 days writers room for all the successful projects, the 20 projects, which will help people think about narrative design, story developments, and the principles of storytelling in immersive spaces, thinking about embodiment, thinking about how kind of to collaborate with the audience, how to kind of, and also how perhaps to solve problems through storytelling, which can often make the structure of the narrative, you know, writers are very, very good problem solvers. So by kind of thinking about the relationship between the technology and the stories that you're trying to tell. So we will also offer for the 4 StoryFutures Academy projects, we'll offer a bespoke writers workshop for those 4 teams, particularly thinking about how we can apply ideas of formatting to those projects and storytelling and format, drawing on experts from in kind of format in television, and also you know, in both in drama and in factual TV. And we'll also be offering one-to-one mentoring for those 4 teams throughout that development and build phase. Next slide, please. So just to say a little bit about the team, I'm head of the writers room. I'm a reader in screenwriting at Royal Holloway, and I also work as a writer in film and TV and radio. Michelle Feuerlicht has just joined us as an immersive producer. She's been working on the RSC Audience of the Futures project, and she's also got experience as a TV producer, working actually in taking British formats and developing them in the US. So kind of, again, has kind of expertise in format. Amanda Murphy, who is our the StoryFutures Academy executive producer, is also a TV format expert who directed the first season of Big Brother here, and also produced a BAFTA-winning short film, which was the first BAFTA winner, which began in YouTube. Pete Higgin, who is Director of Enrichment and Joint CEO of Punch Drunk, who has kind of huge expertise in storytelling in immersive spaces, and a kind of Neil Cullen, who's just joined us as a creative technologist and has a kind of particular expertise in sound, worked in as a games designer, worked with the Scottish Orchestra for a long time, and most recently was digital producer at the V&A. As we've not all been in the same physical space yet, there's no photograph of us all, so I found a team of 5 who've also perhaps some experience in storytelling in formats. Next slide, please. And just to say that the kind of some thoughts about TV returning series, what the key thing is, if we can find repeating formats for immersive, and find what are the appropriate story forms and ways to build story worlds that audiences want to return to. Obviously, there's huge savings rather than kind of making one new program each time. But if we can define and devise formats the audience want to return to, there's both the possibility of IP, and there's also the possibility of kind of huge savings, you know, in the way that EastEnders uses the same sets each week, or what are the ways in which we can find costs and savings by kind of finding formats that will work in this space. We have some experience working with Peaky Blinders and Maze Theory, and kind of thinking about how that should be transferred into a virtual space, and thinking about training writers, what writers can bring for understanding those narratives, and how those can connect, working with kind of games designers or immersive or VR makers. But we're excited to see what kinds of ideas you may come up with, and we'll be offering kind of tailored support from writers who work in this field, directors who work in this field, producers who work in this field, to kind of try and tease out collaboratively what is it that people are going to want to experience in this world that they haven't been able to experience before, and experience it again. I think that's the next slide. So yeah, these are some of the projects. Amanda's worked on Super Nanny. This is the kind of a still from the Maze Theory VR project, which we've supplied writers on placement to, and other beginnings of ways that people are starting to think about formats and formatting that might work in the space. James, yeah, next slide, please.
So yeah, thanks, Adam. So, you know, formats and episodic work has, you know, begun to emerge. Obviously, the success of Vader Immortal is to one extent powered by the IP of something like Star Wars, but is also powered by creating a journey story that, you know, exists over multiple episodes. And, you know, we're interested in, you know, what does the next kind of episodic or format driven work look like? So the kinds of experience that apply to the StoryFutures Academy strand, obviously narrative-led experiences, but a particular preference for work that has repeatable ideas at their heart, to create both efficiencies that Adam was talking about, and repeatable experiences. And next slide, we're here for the Q&A, and yeah, please get in touch with any questions about the program.
Thank you both for those presentations. So Next up, we have the audience Q&A. We see that some questions have been coming in, but once again, if you have more, send them through to the Q&A box, and I'll make sure to get them sent through to you. So on our panel for the Q&A, we have Miko, we have Ben, we have James, Adam. We also have Ben Nain from Arts Council England and Madalena Crusty from Digital Catapult. So if our panelists and speakers could just turn their camera and microphone on, that would be great for the Q&A session. So I think some questions are coming in, but before I get to those and sift through them, a question for StoryFutures Academy. In your experience working with content creators, what is the greatest hurdle for script writing in the immersive medium, and how should they overcome that?
Ooh.
I know, so it's a large question, but you can start from anywhere, anywhere you like.
I think the thing that is flexibility. I think that quite often things get tied down very quickly because of kind of the technical requirements, and quite often, like, TV scripts go through many iterations. Plays are rehearsed, and so that people find the right shape of the story, often because there isn't time and because budgets are limited in VR. I think quite often scripts get locked down too soon, and one of the things that I think you can practice through storytelling at paper level is really kind of refining the narrative, and also using some of the techniques which Punch Drunk particularly are good at, and I think StoryFutures is getting better at, of kind of how to refine, focus, simplify the story, so without kind of making something that then becomes fixed and it's too expensive to change it.
Mm-hmm. Flexibility. So a question for Unreal Engine. One person has asked, I'm keen to understand how Unreal can be used for the development of AR experiences, specifically using OCR as a trigger, integrating volumetric capture and more traditional app content such as audio, video, text, and images. I'm not sure that's a question. But if you could speak more to that, and what's your experience of combining all of those elements?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of like OCR, so kind of text or character recognition. I mean, like Unreal Engine those kind of features doesn't have built in, so you'd have to kind of rely on third-party kind of SDKs or APIs to do that. But certainly, if you have that sort of integration, then you could easily then trigger content based on specific, like, I mean, something that being kind of read. Volumetric capture, I mean, we do support. We've done, or like kind of companies have done content with volumetric capture, both using kind of the Microsoft, is it MetaStage or something, like the kind of capture technology, but it's kind of generally, it's again kind of relying on those third-party providers for both the capture and then kind of SDK to actually read that data in Unreal Engine, but yeah, completely doable. And then kind of more traditional app content, I mean, audio, video, and images, I mean, those are just kind of your regular kind of content formats that you could easily kind of implement and then drop into your AR experiences.
Thank you. So another question for Ben. The question is, we are currently working on a Magic Leap project using Unity and real-time data. However, we would love to switch to Unreal as we feel the workflow is more intuitive and the rendering quality amazing. So do you support businesses who want to use this opportunity for internal R&D to switch platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And there are a couple of other questions about this in the chat, which I jumped ahead and answered, and I realized I probably shouldn't have done. But just to answer that as a sort of a global question, which is it okay to apply either without Unreal Engine experience or with an experience that's already been built in a different product? That's absolutely fine. So in terms of the Unreal Engine strand of this program, yes, you don't need to have an Unreal Engine product or project rather. You don't need an Unreal Engine project in order to apply. You don't need Unreal Engine experience to apply. If you have Unreal Engine experience and you have an Unreal Engine project, then absolutely that will be looked upon favorably. But it's not the be all and end all. And you know, using this strand as a chance to pivot and take, as this specific question asks, a project that's Unity for Magic Leap, that would be a great use of this cohort.
Good to know. So Miko, someone has asked, how far away are we from participants being able to talk to AR characters in a way that affords a good level of engagement to inform gameplay?
I don't know. Like from a kind of AI perspective, I think we're still somewhat off. But I mean, I know there are companies kind of trying to focus just purely for this problem. One, I just remember, like, I think it's a Finnish company. I'm from Finland, so I know. But this, it's called Speechly, and I think their kind of whole product is kind of centered around doing kind of voice-enabled apps that, you know, you can do little simple dialogues. But I think, I mean, conversational AI is still, I would say, I don't know, a couple of years off, many years off. I don't know. Nobody knows yet. But yeah, I mean, I think simple stuff you can do now, kind of, you know, do kind of start, stop, how are you, what's the weather like, you know, Google and Alexa type of stuff. But I'm saying on a longer term, yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. Thank you. So I have a question. Sorry, lots of questions are coming in. So there's a question for StoryFutures. You've spoken a lot about, you know, you want to see series and repeatable concepts in the open core as opposed to a standalone experience. I think just want clarification that is that like a hard line, or are you open to standalone experiences?
I mean, it is our very strong preference of what we think that this landscape will improve and where we'd like to see our funding go. So we think there are lots of standalone experiences. We're really interested in supporting ideas that have repeatability, formatting at their core. And that could be fiction, it could be non-fiction, it could be serial, it could be format. But at the heart of them, they're thinking about how they're returnable as a narrative.
Wonderful. Good for that clarification on that. So there's a question around strands. So I think, Maddie, if you can answer, do you have to apply targeting one specific strand?
So the answer is no. I mean, so there's definitely like the general CreativeXR brief, which doesn't apply. So there will be some projects that will not be within a specific strand. And I see that there's a question underneath that is about if your proposal covers multiple strands, is it necessary to apply to just one? And same thing, the answer is no, you can apply to as many strands as you want, as well as not apply to any strands at all. if the difference is that if you're part of a strand, you will receive additional support and additional benefits. The thing that I would say is that if your project applies to multiple strands, so AI, 5G, Unreal, I would just really think about where will you most benefit support from. So will you benefit from support from an AI technologist, or from a 5G technologist, or from Unreal support, or in support in writing your script? So just really think about where do you want to develop that prototype more, and if you do want to apply to multiple strands, you can also apply to multiple strands. I would just, and it is possible that a project could be in more than one strand, but I would just also consider the time that it might take to receive that support. So obviously I realize, during CreativeXR, you'd be working on other projects as well, probably. So just really consider how much time you want to spend working, developing a specific part of your project when applying to the strands. I hope that clarified everything, but if you have any other questions about it, please do type them in if there was anything that was unclear there.
Great, thank you, Maddie. Another question for Story Futures. Is this strand purely for people who work in screen industries?
No, it's not. It is open to people who already have experience in immersive. We'd encourage you to think about whether there are people from screen industries or companies from screen industries you'd like to access, and talk to us about that in order to develop your ideas. But no, it's totally open to people already working in the industry.
Wonderful. Another question, I think for Unreal. I was wondering about the deeper audio capabilities of Unreal, i.e. any resources to make synthesizers or work with other technology such as PD or C sound.
That's actually something I'm not too familiar on, so you should probably follow up that offline. I know, there's a huge focus on improving and kind of creating next-gen audio tools in Unreal at the moment, but then kind of integrating with external resources. That's just not an area I'm that too familiar of. But I mean, if the asker wants to kind of reach out afterwards, we can dig deeper into this.
Okay, wonderful. So another question. Roderick is a Unity developer and is starting to feel a bit disenfranchised with their top-level multiplayer functionality rollout. Can you briefly give us a view of Unreal's multiplayer functionality now and in the future?
Sure, yeah, and I think there was another question about that as well, kind of multiplayer VR, so I guess we can address those both. Yeah, so I mean, Unreal comes with a kind of built-in multiplayer kind of feature set, and kind of and it's very well. I mean, you can kind of look at Fortnite, which is a massive product with millions of players every day using the same kind of technology stack. But the kind of nice thing is that we have this, it's called like a gameplay framework or game mode framework, and it gives you like a built-in way that's kind of baked into the whole system of kind of full multiplayer setup. So it's since it's kind of built in, it's very kind of easy to take on. You just have to follow these kind of framework guidelines on how to kind of do that. But replication and kind of server client setup, all that is there, and it's massively battle tested with Fortnite and other multiplayer games. And the other question was kind of just referencing if they need to kind of bring in something like improbable. I mean, you can certainly do that, but I don't think kind of like unless you're going into kind of like a massively multiplayer world with thousands of simultaneous players, you don't really need to. I think you get all the kind of functionality for VR stuff, especially just straight from the engine.
Great, thank you. Another question that's been highly upvoted is around where we can see content or finished work that was finished on previous programs. So Maddie, could you give some insight on that?
Yes, it's definitely so. Okay, all of the projects that have been through the program are listed on our website under the cohort section. There's definitely under the previous cohort section, and I'll send a link on the chat. There's also some great kind of documentary videos on the 5 projects that we awarded production funding to in the first cohort of CreativeXR. Right now, it's a particularly difficult time. I think, unfortunately, it's the nature of the medium. We usually have the content that can be viewed, without a physical set. We have the experiences in our immersive lab, which when we reopen will be, you can get in touch with us to view that content. And otherwise, a lot of the content has been released at different film festivals, or they're planning their tour right now. But the thing is, obviously, with this whole COVID-19 situation, things are a bit in standstill. So, I'm going to send the link to the previous cohorts in the chat now. And yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a better answer for the time being. But do watch those videos because they do give some insight into what those projects were about.
Thank you, Maddie. So a question for Adam is dance and movement a valid method for narrative and storytelling?
Yes, I think so. I don't see why not. I mean, I guess with all of the case, we're thinking about how people make that case. I wouldn't want to rule out any medium or way of telling stories, because there are all kinds of ways that people tell stories. But I would say it's up to you to convince us, both for the Story Futures strand, how this is a kind of returnable form, and for generally to kind of say, this is the way that we will be using this medium to tell stories, and why it's the right way to tell the story that you want to tell.
Thank you. And another question is, what support is available for IP licensing through the program? So Stephen Rowe has recent experience of digitally interpreting theatre content, and the publisher, designer, producer agreements have proved difficult. Is there an IP specialist on the team who can help draft template agreements?
Probably best for James, but we have got kind of various draft agreements and agreements in place. I'm not sure what the specific position is for the Story Future thing, but I'm sure it will be part of it in some form.
That's probably one we probably just need to talk through in terms of lining up what Digital Catapult are doing and what Story Futures Academy are doing. But we can certainly run a workshop on those issues, because it's not a new issue.
So one thing I could add is that for we have done, and we do have, as part of the CreativeXR program, we are planning to have a general kind of IP and licensing workshop from an IP lawyer. However, we're not able to give very specific advice to the team, specific legal advice, but we can kind of guide you on best practice and things like that, and we will be touching upon that during the program, because it's something that comes up a lot.
Thank you. I'm looking at another upvoted question. So I think there's one around, a quick one for you, Maddie, given that this is a content accelerator for CXR for existing projects rather than new projects.
So this is a content accelerator for new projects. So the funding is specifically to fund your developed idea, your developed concept, and to be able to make it into an immersive prototype. So it's not funding to continue a project that is already, so for completion funding, for example, or distribution funding. This is not for that. This is for new content.
Thank you. So Ben, another question has come your way. Do you think there is a move towards live theatre, immersive and VR? And if so, why do you think this is relevant, and who are the key players in your opinion? I'm assuming this is Ben Lumsden this is being directed towards.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really early days. I think we've seen some moves here. The National Theatre did a great piece of volumetric VR, all kinds of limbo, which was great. And the volumetric capture for that was done at Dimension Studios in London. And we've seen other elements of that. The Royal Shakespeare Company have done a Magic Leap piece called 7 Ages of Man, which was really good. Just again, very short form, but it wasn't live theatre. And again, the Imaginarium did a piece with the Grinning Man musical, again on Magic Leap. So we've seen different people having a foray into this world. I think it's really early. I think elements of what we've done in Fortnite you could consider to be live events of that sort. I think we're going to see a massive drive in this direction, but the key players, other than those I've mentioned already, and the technology companies, it's hard to say. I think the big challenge at the moment also relates to the digital human question that Miko was talking to earlier, and how to really sort of showcase live people and live performance. And that can either be by volumetric video streamed through a real-time engine, or it could be by a digitally puppeteered performance captured human. And they're sort of two different strands of the same challenge. And we're putting a lot of effort at Epic into our digital human initiative. We've bought a couple of companies recently in the last 2 years, Trilateral, who make all of the AAA video game character rigs for companies like Grand Theft Auto, games like Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption, and Cubic Motion, who do live real-time facial capture and animation in Manchester. And we're doing a big drive. And if you're interested in that element, there's some great resources online talking about it. But yeah, the challenge of hosting something live, I think, is a very difficult challenge, specifically in virtual reality, doing it live. There are some platforms that are emerging, but nothing that's really relevant yet, I would say.
Okay, thank you. So a quick question for Ben Lane. Can we use CreativeXR funding to supplement an Arts Council application? So I'm presuming perhaps there's a separate fund or that somebody's applying to. Can they use CreativeXR funding to supplement that?
Yeah, it's a good question. It is slightly tricky to answer, however. So, can you have Arts Council match funding alongside CreativeXR funding? The answer is no, because Arts Council funding is already in there with the CreativeXR money, so you can't match fund our money with our money effectively. However, It may be that you've already had some money from us for a grant to do some initial R&D that's helped you kind of scope out your ideas, and that project is now finished. So that would be fine. The other place where Arts Council money might come back into the equation is if you go through the CreativeXR program, are successful, build your prototype, and then want to, outside of the program, find other ways to leverage more value from it, to take it on tour, to take it to public display, then you could be making an Arts Council application. But can you make an Arts Council application alongside a CreativeXR application? The answer is no.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So I think a question around like inspiration, examples of things moving forward, I think perhaps this can be directed towards StoryFutures Academy. What are your favorite narrative VR films? Best examples of moving things forward?
Sort of, I don't know if it's helpful to give an answer to that, because I don't want my personal taste to inform what people should do. I think, I think there are lots of great examples out there of work, and they cover a wide range of stuff that's documentary and fiction. I think, yeah, I don't want to sort of be put on the spot with that one, and I think people should explore and follow their own passions for stories would be what I would promote there. I don't know, Adam, you can be more wildcard if you like.
No, well, all I would say is actually think about, I mean, I'm quite interested in one of our researchers made me aware of the book problem, which is like in VR, apparently people achieve a kind of level of absolute engagement with the story, which can be measured in the kind of, through body reading or what, heart rate, pulse, when is somebody absolutely engaged in the story. And they say this is something called the book problem, because books can also put people in the same state. So I think it's maybe much more thinking about what kinds of stories are appropriate to be told in this world. And as again, I wouldn't want to say, if I say one, then everybody will apply in that one. What we're thinking about is, how does the envelope expand? Maybe there are different ways of using the technology, using maybe small amounts of the technology, as people have mentioned, audio is one of the things that we're thinking about, all sorts of ways that people might use things in slightly different ways, and particularly with the StoryFutures, I mean, what would returning narratives or format narratives be in fact or fiction in this space, or using the range of technologies which are available. So again, I wouldn't want to say this is the one I like. What I would like to say is the one I really want is the one that you're going to make, which we haven't yet seen.
Thank you for those answers. So some more questions coming in. Again for you, Adam and James. In making the prototype for a repeatable experience, would you be looking for something like a pilot episode, or would you look for more content to showcase how audiences could return to the world?
Yeah, if it's narrative based, yes, that's a good way of thinking about it, having a pilot episode, but also a really clear trajectory of where those episodes then leave. So we'd expect some of the prototyping to be going into actually thinking about the ongoing narrative, so spending time with the writer, and that may produce a very short prototype or pilot experience, but there is a clear narrative trajectory for the future episodes. Adam, do you want to jump in on that?
Yes, I'd just say the same. I think, again, it's about making the case. It's about thinking about what are the repeatable elements, and how are those going to kind of engage the audience, or that might be, as simple as episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. There may be kind of other ways that you're going to kind of visualize that or make people engage with the concept. And again, the guidelines for the CreativeXR deliverables are quite clear, and I would think it'd be worth thinking about how those are going to specifically include the repeatable or the format elements of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, but with writing or engaging or helping people kind of imagine how that story or that experience continues.
Mm-hmm. Great. So for Ben Lumsden, there's a question. Is there any funding opportunities from Epic for hardware development for volumetric video?
Yes, not via this program. We run a broader funding program called the Mega Grants, which is $100 million fund over 5 years, and each award is anywhere between $5,000 and $100,000, and it's no strings attached, free cash. And the high level sort of announcement about all of that and vision is that Tim Sweeney, our founder, is looking to accelerate the adoption of all of these technologies into the next industrial revolution that I spoke about briefly before. So anything that is open source is looked upon favorably. Anything that is of benefit to the Unreal Engine community or the 3D graphics community as a whole is looked upon favorably. But that would be the place. That would be the place to look for that funding, and you can do that online. There's a very very thorough FAQ, which is great. And coincidentally, the funds that Epic have released for CreativeXR, that's where they come from. It's all via the Mega Grants program.
Thank you. So Maddie, there's a question around sort of like team makeup and the type of companies that apply to the program. So one person has asked, since they're a sole trader, designer, maker, artist, and they're working on an innovative tactile audio resonance art project with potential for gaming industry use. So they wanted to apply for CreativeXR, but to them it seems unclear if sole traders can apply and their partners apply for another project. Is there a workaround? Could you give clarification on what kind of entities can apply to CreativeXR?
So sole traders can apply. They need to have a business bank account, and that's just really crucial, to have a business bank account where we can release the funds in. Ben, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you kind of covered it there, Maddie. I mean, just you and I had an interesting conversation the other day about where companies are registered. So there is a kind of obvious one of companies' house registration, but also there are some of you out there who may be charities, and there are types of charities that register with the Charities Commission, not Companies House. What we're really looking for here is that kind of evidence that you are a certified company effectively. And yes, that could be a sole trader, but a sole trader would need to have a certified company to apply through.
Was there a second part to that question?
There wasn't a second part. There was another question below that, just asking, can companies who apply be either limited by guarantee or limited by shares? And can the projects be based on full cost recovery? So i.e. kind of percentage of salaries be included in the project costs?
Ben?
So again, it's a good question without wanting to give too complex an answer. I would always say with full cost recovery, yes, of course. I mean, we're not going to pay to run your office for a year, obviously. However, we don't want you to be out of pocket for doing work that is absolutely part of the project that you want to do. So yes, some kind of prorated contribution to overheads, I would say would be eligible to put into an application.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
So I'm just looking through more questions. So there's a question around 5G. So I think I might just leave this open, but 5G hardware is not very common yet. Can we work towards 5G, e.g. by using 4G mobile video streaming, or does it have to use 5G hardware? So we did have a previous webinar around our 5G strand. And what would happen in that process is once you make an application and highlighting how you see 5G being used in your experience, then we would have a call to discuss how realistic is that. We can share a link to that webinar as well, so you get more information on from our 5G experts as well on how 5G can be applied. Maddie, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I think it's a really good question. And I would be keen to go back to our technologists with this question, because like my reaction would be yes, like you can work towards 5G, and then you know, especially given the current conditions. But I think what would be great if Stephen, you could send an email to hello@CreativeXR so that we can go back to our technologists and get a proper answer, and we'll publish that in our FAQs then so everyone can see, because I do think it's a really good question.
Great, thank you. So there's a question around from Francesca. Can a company submit a project idea that is content-based, but the content is enjoyed in a more immersive way by using haptics, spatial, audio, wearable? We aim to make content more immersive by using multi-sensory stimulation. Asking because others are saying that hardware is an absolute no in this competition.
I think from my perspective, and then maybe Ben, if you want to add to it, I mean, it sounds like this is a content-based project, and to me that sounds like it would be eligible, because it's a content-based project and you're utilizing immersive technologies. And we do also understand that we expect for you to be set up to create immersive content. So we wouldn't expect to like buy your all of, for you to use the grant to cover your basic kind of tools to create immersive content. But if it's specialized immersive content, I think it's just, to me, that sounds eligible.
It sounds it to me as well. I think there is a general point to make here as well, however, and CreativeXR is a content development fund, and so it is very focused on that kind of almost a kind of artistic idea, you might call it. What CreativeXR doesn't deal so well with, and we have seen these before, is applications that are more focused on either the creation of some kind of platform or some kind of distribution model. Whilst there's some fantastic and very innovative ideas out there that people have, CreativeXR, to be kind of really competitive, you really need to have that kind of strong single artistic idea for a piece of content. It may be that you thought of ways that in the future, if you're successful, you might leverage it into other forms of distribution or into some kind of platform. It may be a proof of concept for a platform, but for CreativeXR, it is focused on that single idea.
Thank you. So a question for Adam, or anyone, is there any research to support Is there any research to support the statement that neurodivergent people are drawn to VR either as audience participants and or makers?
It's not my area of expertise. I wouldn't like to comment, but it's a very interesting question.
That is fair enough. Another question for James. In theory, does StoryFutures offer access to research bodies such as Royal Holloway University, English Literature MA, even if the project isn't narrative-based?
I'm not sure I totally understand. The question might be easy for that person to get in touch directly.
Yeah.
Seems like a quite specific question.
Yes. You're right. I think it's quite, so if you send a question through to hello@CreativeXR, and then we can follow up with an answer to that. So there's a question around, does an applicant need to have technical team members, i.e. Unreal developers, in place for their projects at the time of application?
We would, I mean, my answer would be no. We would not expect for you, we would expect for you to have your kind of key team members in place. So like your creative, your producer, but we wouldn't expect for you to have your whole developer team in place.
I think just to kind of come in there, Maddie, there's just again to kind of make a general point off the back of that question, that the strongest CreativeXR applications are able to show that there's a balance between that kind of strong artistic idea I was just talking about, but also that you've kind of got the wherewithal technically and understanding technically to actually realize your idea and build it. So as a general point, yes, have that great idea, but also make sure you assemble the team or know how you're going to assemble the team that's actually going to help you realize that.
Thank you. A question for StoryFutures. How complete should scripts be at application time? So I suppose it would just be good to just give more guidance on what you're looking to see in the script or treatment that people send through.
Well, I guess a kind of clear and brief, summary of kind of what's essential about the project. And I think we've been having a discussion about kind of how much people should submit. And I think we feel both for practical, but also for kind of storytelling reasons, kind of to do that concisely and clearly is the most important thing. So kind of as people say, it's often harder to write 1 page than 20 pages. So I think thinking about how to clearly describe what the project consists of, what's unique about it and how it's going to work is what we're looking for, rather than kind of, anything that is kind of prolix or and the rest of the totality of the application, but also the clarity of the project that people are submitting is what we would be interested in. I don't know, James, if you want to add to that.
I think very much we're looking for the potential in the idea at that stage, because we expect you to the projects to be working on them during the mentoring period. So very much initial ideas and trying to excite us about the idea.
Okay, thank you. Another question is for StoryFutures again, are you interested in non-fictional narrative as well?
Yes, absolutely. James, I can see your mic's on too.
Yep, absolutely.
Simple answer there. So fictional and non-fictional should come through. We want to see those applications. So another question for Maddie is, if we have existing tech partners we are collaborating with or think could benefit from partnering with them, how best do we include them in the application if they are not directly related to the application? We want to like work with them in a tech and R&D capacity.
I think this relates back to Ben's earlier point about the makeup of your team. So if they're your tech partners, then I would say, you know, they're part of your team, and I would describe, you know, what they're doing, etc., in that section of the application, and I think that will really help with your application as well, because it really covers the technical side, as Ben mentioned earlier.
Great. So I think I'll ask like one more question around like business aspects of things, and then again, if you have more specific questions, the hello@CreativeXR email is available. So there's one question around distribution model. So somebody's wondering about the distribution model and the business side of the project. What are key elements you want to see in the application? Yes.
Well, I think you know, everyone can add to this, but from our point of view, we'd like to see that you've thought about your audience and how the piece will actually reach the audience, and also think about how the piece will you will either make an impact out of it, like thinking about what impact can you make out of it, or how will it how will you make any revenue out of it? That's also, you know, a type of impact that we look at. So just thinking about the longevity of the piece beyond CreativeXR, and that you've really thought about how it will help your business as well.
And I would add to that one kind of no-no from me, and we do see this a fair bit, is people who, when asked who is the piece for, who is the intended audience for this piece, a fairly common answer is everybody, or arts audiences, or and I would say that's too general and not specific enough. So I think when you're thinking about audiences, really think who is it that you want to experience this? What is their experience, and what are they going to get from it, and what kind of thing you're trying to create for them, and that should lead you to thinking more about who exactly that audience is, and then sitting alongside that, of course, then becomes kind of helps you answer that question of how do you actually reach them. The other thing to say actually is that if you are successful, this is one of the things that Digital Catapult are great at in terms of thinking about the workshop program. So there is some kind of consideration around distribution beyond what you put in your application and support with that. This is still an emerging sector, and so we're all learning together on this, and that this is something that Maddie and I talk about quite a bit, that actually Digital Catapult and Arts Council is learning more about the sector and kind of working alongside you to think about distribution and how that all works. I think thinking about that question in particular in the light of the current situation is going to be really important. How are you going to reach those audiences given the kind of current restrictions?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Ben, about the program. I mean, so at Digital Catapult, we undertake other research projects, and particularly right now we are looking at audiences, at the immersive audience journey. So as part of the program, you know, we expect for you to really, and applications will stand out, or applications that will think about these aspects, but we will also be supporting you throughout these as the program goes on.
Yes. So that's the last question from now. So I think what we'll do is we'll wrap up. Thank you to all of our speakers. We think that there have been some really great presentations, interesting questions coming through. and we're really excited to see the applications come through from the audience. So if you do have more really more specific questions particular to your own projects, do send them through to hello@creativexr.com, and we'll try and get that answered or put in the FAQs document on our website. Sorry, what was that, Maddie?
No, I was just saying that the email is hello@creativexr.co.uk.
Thank you.
No worries.
So our next steps is we want to make sure that you do collaborate again as attendees. So make sure to fill in the Typeform collaboration survey, which has been put in the chat. And you'll also find it in our post-event email. And then do make sure that you apply to CreativeXR. Our deadline is on Sunday, the 17th of May, 11:59 p.m. And we're looking forward to reading them and seeing what comes out of this webinar. So once again, thank you to Ben, Miko, Ben, Adam, James, Tonya, Maddie for speaking and joining us today on this webinar. That's it from us today. And thank you, all the attendees, for joining. So have a good day and stay safe. Bye, everyone.